I used to do a radio show in Los Angeles, California, and I coined the phrase Governor Hair Gel when describing Gavin Newsom, one of the most ineffective, feckless, irresponsible, evil men that I've ever met in American politics. Yes, that's right, evil. When a sociopath can look you straight in the eyes and lie to you, not only lie to you, but pretend like you're the problem, that you're the liar, that you're insane. If you're not buying the bullshit that he's throwing your way, well, that's sociopathic behavior. That's evil. That's Governor Hair Gel. And Governor Hair Gel took to the airwaves yesterday to address his troubled state. We're going to go through his speech, and then we're going to show you some of the buffoonery that occurred when they tried to broadcast this, because not only can this guy not run a state, he can't even plug a microphone in properly. But let's take a look at the governor addressing the people of California.
The events of the last few days. This past weekend, federal agents conducted large-scale workplace raids in and around Los Angeles. Those raids continue as I speak. California is no stranger to immigration enforcement, but instead of focusing on undocumented immigrants with serious criminal records and people with final deportation orders, a strategy both parties have long supported, this administration is pushing mass deportations, indiscriminately targeting hardworking immigrant families, regardless of their roots or risk. What's happening right now is very different than anything we've seen before. On Saturday morning, when federal agents jumped out of an unmarked van near a Home Depot parking lot, they began grabbing people, a deliberate targeting of a heavily Latino suburb. A similar scene played out when a clothing company was raided downtown. In other actions, a U.S. citizen, 9 months pregnant, was arrested. A 4-year-old girl taken, families separated, friends quite literally disappearing. In response, everyday Angelenos came out to exercise their constitutional right to free speech and assembly.
All right, we got to pause there. And for those of you who don't like it when I jump in, this thing is 7 minutes long. We will get through the whole thing, but we need to break it up a bit. Did he just say that people are literally disappearing? That they are literally disappearing people? What the hell is he talking about? Honestly, is he like playing out some sort of science fiction old X-Files episode where people are like, is this like Left Behind series? Is Kirk Cameron coordinating all of this? Is he nuts? He used the word literally. They're literally disappearing people. They're vanishing from the face of the earth. Now, he just threw out a whole lot of crap at you, and I just want to unpack as much as I can. ICE agents jumping out of their vehicles and apprehending people where they have a warrant for their arrest, that's law enforcement. That's what the police do, you idiot. You're in charge of the California Highway Patrol, which is the state police of California. That's what they do under your command as well, when they have a warrant, just like these ICE agents have. And by the way, I love the fact that he's like, instead of just targeting the hardened criminals, dude, you were against that too. He's like, if they were just going after hardened criminals who are on the streets and in this country illegally, we'd be fine with that. No, you wouldn't. And by the way, that is what they did. We told you yesterday on the show, just 3 of the people that they picked up at the Home Depot in Carson on Friday, one of them was an illegal immigrant from Vietnam who had been convicted for opening fire and murdering 2 people at a high school graduation. One of them from the Philippines sexually abused a minor. The other one from, I believe, Mexico was a serial wife beater. They are going after criminals. Now, here's the problem in the state of California, because this guy has set up sanctuary policies. Local law enforcement are not allowed to cooperate with ICE agents when they have a hardened criminal in their custody and is in the country illegally. They're not allowed to turn them over to federal agents. So what happens? Instead of doing this at a jail facility, ICE is compelled to have to go to a Home Depot or to some apparel company in downtown Los Angeles. That's his fault. He created this climate. He created this situation. You already know all of that because you're smart enough to watch this show. We've been beating this drum for days. Also, by the way, a lot of the investigations and coordinated raids that you've seen over the last several days in Southern California have not just been conducted to apprehend people who are in the country illegally. There are some people who, if they're affiliating with these hardened criminals and they're there associating with them and they're in the country illegally, guess what? ICE is not going to let them go. They're going to pick them up too. Yes, sometimes that's going to happen. Let me explain why. Because again, this guy needs a fact check every other syllable. But when you see people on your Facebook page saying stuff like this, when you hear the crazy liberal at the cubicle next to you or your liberal brother-in-law at dinner this Sunday, and they'll say, well, they're picking up mothers and pregnant women and abuelas who have been here for 20 years and they've never broken the law. Here's what happens, okay? Again, because of the sanctuary policies, ICE is compelled to go into homes to grab the people who are, suspected murderers and pedophiles, etc. That's not their choice. They'd rather handle this at the prison or the jail in an orderly fashion like what happens in red states, but because he has set up sanctuary policies, they refuse to cooperate. So this is what they have to do. So they go into a house and there's 10 other people there, including a 9-month pregnant woman, including an abuela who's been here for 20 years. And she's just making tamales for all of the people who also are in the house and maybe or maybe not are pedophiles. So why do they arrest them? Why do they not look and they say, okay, you're here illegally too, but you don't have a criminal record, so we're not going to apprehend you. We're going to let you stay. We're only going to take the people who are in this house who are undocumented, who have broken the law. I mean, other laws other than our immigration laws. Why do they do that? Why do they grab the 9-month-old pregnant woman? Why do they grab the grandma making tamales? It's very simple. There's 2 reasons. The first is they're law enforcement officers, and their job is to enforce the law. And if they encounter somebody who has broken the law, especially immigration law, since they're, immigration law enforcement, it's their duty to apprehend that person. It's not their job to be a judge. It's not their job to give somebody leniency. It's not their job to say, okay, you know what, you broke that law, but everything else is fine, so we're going to let you walk. Go. No, that's a judge's job. That's not a cop's job. You don't want cops making those decisions. That's number one, first and foremost, fundamental. Okay, you arrest the people that broke the law. Let them have their day in court. Let the judges decide what's going to be done with them. That's the first reason. But here's the second reason. Remember the illegal immigrant Egyptian in Boulder, Colorado, about 10 days ago, who made Molotov cocktails and started hurling them at innocent elderly Jews, trying to incinerate them and murder them? You remember him, don't you? Well, he was in the country illegally too. And he did not have a criminal record. He had not broken any laws. And the Biden administration, they did exactly what Gavin Newsom is demanding that they do right now. The Biden administration says, hey, you broke the law. You're in the country illegally. But, it's cool, dude. Just stay here until you do something bad. And then when you do something bad, we'll go ahead and deport you. You see the problem here. So the Trump administration is going to do that. And then the next thing you know, the 9-month pregnant woman ends up being some gangbanger. She just didn't have a criminal record because she hadn't been arrested yet. The 9-month pregnant woman ends up being a radical Islamic terrorist and starts throwing Molotov cocktails. And then who's to blame? Oh, Trump let this person stay in the country. They had him. They actually had ICE agents. They had apprehended her, but then they let her go. See, you can't do that. That's the thing about an organized, civilized society. You break the laws, you pay the consequences. Doesn't matter what your intent is. It doesn't matter if you've kept your nose clean, everything. So yeah, you broke those laws. There are repercussions. I'm sorry, it sucks. Have any of you ever raised children? This is kind of what you have to do. So that's why this happens. And that's why they're arresting them. Because yeah, sure, this person's in the country illegally, broke our laws, and hasn't broken any other laws though. So why don't we just let them go free? Because then what happens when they do break the law? Whose fault is that? You could have prevented it by getting them out of the country when you had them. You want your ICE agents to do that. You want your Department of Homeland Security to do that. All right, let's get back to Mr. Peaceful Protester.
To protest their government's actions. In turn, the state of California and the city and county of Los Angeles sent our police officers to help keep the peace. And with some exceptions, they were successful. Like many states, California is no stranger to this sort of unrest. We manage it regularly and with our own law enforcement. But this, again, was different. What then ensued was a use of tear gas, flashbang grenades, rubber bullets, federal agents detaining people and undermining their due process rights. Donald Trump, without consulting California law enforcement leaders, commandeered 2,000 of our state's National Guard members to deploy on our streets illegally and for no reason.
Now, I want you to know that as he just said that this was illegally done, this is just hours after the federal courts had smacked him down. He tried to sue the Trump administration. He was claiming that this was done illegally, and the court said, no, get back in your cage there, Mr. Governor Serpentine. This isn't illegal, but he's still repeating that lie to the people of California and anyone else who dares to listen to him at this point. So there's more lies, more lies, more lies. It wasn't commandeering of the National Guard. Trump was waiting for the governor and the elected officials in California to actually retain order and to make sure that federal agents and federal property weren't destroyed. They refused to do that. Federal agents were in danger. Federal buildings have been destroyed with graffiti and broken windows. It's the president's obligation and responsibility and duty to protect federal property. You've paid for those buildings. You paid for those windows. You pay the salaries of those law enforcement agents. And guess what? Those law enforcement agents that work for the federal government, for ICE, they've got wives and children back home. It's the president's job to protect them. Just because he didn't do it doesn't mean that it's chaos. Okay, that's fine. We'll just step back and let chaos. Understand the underlying message of this entire thing. As Gavin Newsom addresses the people of California, he is making this entire thing into a political issue between him and Trump. None of this would be happening if it weren't for Trump. But what is Trump really doing? What has made him mad? What is the case he's making as to why all of this crime and all of this stuff that's going on is Trump's fault? What did Trump do? He enforced the law. Their message is, hey, if Trump just got out of here and stopped enforcing the law, everything would be fine. That's his message, and he wants to be your president. You know he does. Look at him. He's got the set. He's got the suit. He's cosplaying as the chief executive here. He's cosplaying as the president. I welcome his entry into politics. I'm pretty sure J.D. Vance does too.
Brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk. That's when the downward spiral began. He doubled down on his dangerous National Guard deployment by fanning the flames even harder. And the president, he did it on purpose. As the news spread throughout LA, anxiety for family and friends ramped up. Protests started again. By night, several dozen lawbreakers became violent and destructive. They vandalized property. They tried to assault police officers. Many of you have seen the video clips of cars burning on cable news. If you incite violence, I want to be clear about this. If you incite violence or destroy our communities, you're going to be held to account. That kind of criminal behavior will not be tolerated. Full stop.
Oh, but it's not a full stop, is it? Nice freeze there. Looks like a blow-up doll. Think about what Gavin Newsom is. He's playing tough guy now, right? He's playing tough guy, law and order guy. We're going to maintain order. You break the law, you will be dealt with. Full stop. Really? Okay. So why are all these illegal immigrants walking the street, and why are you protecting them? Why are you standing in the way of law enforcement? See, Trump is saying the same thing, isn't he? Isn't Secretary Noem saying the same thing? Isn't Border Czar Homan saying the same thing? Isn't Stephen Miller saying the same thing? Stephen Miller is standing up there. The president of the United States is standing up there with the same flags behind him. And the president of the United States is saying, you break our immigration laws, you will be dealt with, full stop. And Newsom screams bloody murder. Newsom thinks that's too far. How dare you? How dare you enforce immigration laws? You're separating families. Well, how is that different? No, really. I'm asking a legitimate question that each and every one of you needs to answer if you can. And every liberal friend or family member who is playing the violin over these deportations right now, they need to answer that question too. Because he doesn't get to stand up there and grandstand and pound on the podium and act like Mr. Tough Guy Law Enforcement and say, you break our laws and you will be dealt with. Full stop. Even though they weren't dealing with it and they weren't arresting anybody and they were letting the mayhem and the violence go. That's okay. Now he's changed his tune. Now it's Wednesday night, Tuesday night. Now we can give our speech. So you break the law, you will be dealt with. Full stop. Okay. Then how come the president of the United States is not afforded the exact same authority? That's all President Trump is saying. You break our laws, you'll be dealt with. That's what he promised when he ran for office. His gal, Kamala Harris, she had her opportunity to win the election. She didn't. Why? Because she couldn't say that. She couldn't stand up and say, you break our laws and you will be dealt with. Trump said that. He won. He's now doing what he promised to do. So I'm so sorry, Gavin, as you try to be Mr. Tough Guy, new cop in town, we're going to arrest everybody. Because you know what? I've lived in California. My friends and family have lived in California under your tyranny, under your lawless tyranny. We see how you run that state. People are shoplifting all the time and you don't do anything about it. People are living on the streets and you don't do anything about it. It's against the law in California to live on the streets, and he's done nothing. And they're not just living on the streets. They're urinating on the streets. They're defecating on the streets. They're fornicating on the streets. They're doing drugs right out in the open. There are hypodermic needles in every single park in Los Angeles County. You can't take your kids there anymore. And he's Mr. Tough Guy. You break the law. He has never enforced any law in California with any kind of passion or interest or force, unless it's public smoking. Oh, you sit in that park with the criminal vagrants everywhere, having sex and turning tricks for money and defecating and urinating and leaving their hypodermic needles around. They'll do nothing. But you light a cigarette in a public park, oh, you're going away. I don't even think you get a trial. I think it's straight to jail. That's Gavin Newsom's California. And that's Gavin Newsom's America if y'all don't wake up. All right, go ahead. Go ahead. Full stop. You're going to jail. Go ahead, Gavin.
Already more than 220 people have been arrested, and we're reviewing tapes to build additional cases, and people will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Again, thanks to our law enforcement officers and the majority of Angelenos who protested peacefully, the situation was winding down and was concentrated in just a few square blocks downtown. But that's not what Donald Trump wanted. He again chose escalation. He chose more force. He chose theatrics over public safety. He federalized another 2,000 Guard members. He deployed more than 700 active U.S. Marines. These are the men and women trained for foreign combat, not domestic law enforcement. We honor their service. We honor their bravery.
No, he doesn't. And let me just clear this up again. Fact check. They weren't trained for domestic law enforcement. That's true. But Gavin, quick follow-up question. Are they engaged in domestic law enforcement? Is that what their orders are? Is that what they're doing in California? Answer the question. Are they? The answer is no, they're not. They're not there to engage in domestic law enforcement. He didn't say they were, but that's a really fun way of lying, right? They were trained for foreign conflict, not for domestic law enforcement. The implication is that that's what they're engaging in. No, they're there for one reason and one reason only, to keep the federal building safe and to keep the federal law enforcement officials safe. And if the chief of police in Los Angeles needs assistance and reinforcement, not in domestic law enforcement, but just in terms of giving him some help with crowd control and things like that, they're available to him. And he did say he needed help the other day, and Newsom wasn't doing anything to help him. One other thing, this lie about the military. They've just been trained to kill people. They don't know how to do crowd control. Tell me you've never met anyone in the military without telling me you've never met anyone in the military. I promise you. To write them off as just, they're just there to kill. They just break things and kill. No, actually, they spend a lot of time on crowd control. They spend a lot of time dealing with calming down hostile situations. Have you never heard of Iraq and Afghanistan? Do you not know the guy? How come whenever there's a hurricane in Haiti and people need assistance with their life support, with goods and services, with medical services, when they need, our military is sent to a place like El Salvador if they have an earthquake, or to Haiti if they have a hurricane, and part of what they do is keep people from rioting and looting. It's a lie to say that they're not good at this sort of thing. But I know that's shocking to you to learn that Gavin Newsom was lying. I mean, he is breathing after all, and there is sound coming out of his mouth, so it's kind of a given.
But we do not want our streets militarized by our own armed forces, not in LA, not in California, not anywhere. We're seeing unmarked cars in school parking lots, kids afraid of attending their own graduation. Trump is pulling a military dragnet all across Los Angeles, well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. His agents are arresting dishwashers, gardeners, day laborers, and seamstresses. That's just weakness masquerading as strength.
Gavin Newsom, how are those people working in your state if they're in the country illegally, or as you put them, undocumented? You know, undocumented means literally you don't have the documents to fill out the I-9 form that each and every one of you filled out when you got a job. So, Kevin, how is that happening? Why do you have employers in your state that are willfully hiring illegal aliens? Why is your economy so shaky that it requires cheap virtual slave labor to keep things going? And also, did you notice the types of jobs that he just mentioned? This is so typical of the elite noblesse oblige white liberals who demand they have their menial labor. They look at someone in the country illegally, and all they think of is
attending their own graduation.
Yeah.
Trump is pulling a military dragnet all across Los Angeles, well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. His agents are arresting dishwashers, gardeners, day laborers, and seamstresses.
Yeah, you know, the people who do the jobs that I'm too good to do. It is amazing how that's always the thing that they go to, right? The additional message to his rich, elitist Democrat voters in California is, if they deport those people, my God, who are you going to get to? It's going to cost more to have a gardener. It's a lot cheaper to have somebody who doesn't have documents because they're terrified that you'll turn them in and deport them. That it's just the hypocrisy, the absolute, I'll use the word again, evil nature of this man in his speech cannot be quantified. Go ahead, Gavin.
That's just weakness masquerading as strength. Donald Trump's government isn't protecting our communities. They're traumatizing our communities. And that seems to be the entire point. California will keep fighting. We'll keep fighting on behalf of our people, all of our people, including in the courts. Just yesterday, we filed a legal challenge to Donald Trump's reckless deployment of American troops to a major American city. Today, we sought an emergency court order to stop the use of the American military to engage in law enforcement activities across Los Angeles. If some of us could be snatched off the streets without a warrant, based only on suspicion or skin color, then none of us are safe. Authoritarian regimes begin by targeting people who are least able to defend themselves, but they do not stop there. Trump and his loyalists, they thrive on division because it allows them to take more power and exert even more control. And by the way, Trump, he's not opposed to lawlessness and violence as long as it serves him. What more evidence do we need than January 6th? Ask everyone. Take time, reflect on this perilous moment. A president who wants to be bound by no law or constitution, perpetuating a unified assault on American traditions. This is a president who in just over 140 days has fired government watchdogs that could hold him accountable for corruption and fraud. He's declared a war on culture, on history, on science, on knowledge itself. Databases, quite literally, are vanishing. He's delegitimizing news organizations, and he's assaulting the First Amendment.
Is this a campaign speech? Is he launching the campaign now? Or is this just the exploratory committee? I mean, we're not really talking about, he was addressing the people of California because of the chaos that are in the streets of California and in Los Angeles. And now he's like, oh, and he's fired inspector generals. What am I missing? And the people of California are paying for this, by the way. This exploratory committee for Gavin Newsom for president. It's quite a little scam he's got going there, but you know, this is what they do. Okay, a little bit more.
And the threat of defunding them At threat, he's dictating what universities themselves can teach. He's targeting law firms and the judicial branch that are the foundations of an orderly and civil society. He's calling for a sitting governor to be arrested for no other reason than to, in his own words, for getting elected. And we all know this Saturday, he's ordering our American heroes, the United States military, and forcing them to put on a vulgar display to celebrate his birthday, just as other failed dictators have done in the past. Look, this isn't just about protests here in Los Angeles. When Donald Trump sought blanket authority to commandeer the National Guard, he made that order apply to every state in this nation. This is about all of us. This is about you. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived. He's taking a wrecking ball to our founding fathers' historic project. 3 co-equal branches of independent government. There are no longer any checks and balances. Congress is nowhere to be found. Speaker Johnson has completely abdicated that responsibility. The rule of law has increasingly been given way to the rule of Don. The founding fathers, they didn't live and die to see this kind of moment. It's time for all of us to stand up. Justice Brandeis, he said it best. In a democracy, the most important office, with all due respect, Mr. President, is not the presidency, and it's certainly not governor. The most important office is office of citizen. At this moment, we all need to stand up and be held to account, a higher level of accountability. If you exercise your First Amendment rights, please do it peacefully. I know many of you are feeling deep anxiety, stress, and fear, but I want you to know that you are the antidote to that fear and that anxiety. What Donald Trump wants most is your fealty, your silence to be complicit in this moment. Do not give in to him.
He's an evil is what he is. And he terrifies me, by the way. I make fun of him and I call him names and I point out how completely sociopathic he is, but it's because I'm terrified that he will gain higher office. I'm terrified that he's achieved the office that he's achieved. He's got to be stopped. And so much of what you just heard was so seamlessly and effortlessly and in a very slick way completely delivered in such a polished and professional manner. And yet it was so much deceit. It was so much vitriolic rhetoric. Remember that so much of what they say about Donald Trump, see, you're watching what Donald Trump is doing. You're watching what the president is doing. You're watching the path that the country is being put on right now. You see the economic benefits already in getting the economy back on track. You see how the military is excited about this new commander-in-chief. You see that we've got recruitment numbers that are beating all estimates, and we're way over our Army recruitment numbers months ahead of schedule. You see that other nations around the world are finally respecting us and starting to make trade deals with us and tariff deals with us. You see the president securing our border like that. Remember earlier in the speech when Newsom said, oh, he's not just going after hardened criminals. Well, this guy was against going after the hardened criminals. Joe Biden didn't go after the hardened criminals. Kamala Harris didn't promise to go after the hardened criminals. They didn't even want that to be done. They didn't want the border to be secured. He secured the border like that. You think that a Democrat who gets the White House in 3 years, 8 years, whenever they win the next election, you think that the border will stay secure under their watch? You think they won't reverse this immediately and we'll get right back to where we were under Joe Biden? But you see all of that. You see all of the things that Trump has been able to accomplish. And for the most part, you probably sit back and say, yeah, this is pretty good. He's done a good job so far. In fact, I'd like him to do more. And he just listed every single thing from going after the universities because they've allowed violent anti-Semites to take over their campuses, to pushing back against lawless judges who think that they represent a little district in Montana, and that means they can stop an executive order involving foreign policy and national security nationwide. Yes, Trump is fighting against that because that's unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court has backed that up. He listed all of those things just now as examples of how Trump is an authoritarian fascist. And these are all things that you look at and you say, yeah, it's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this. So think about that for a minute. You see, as always, when they go after Trump for being a Nazi, when they go after Trump for being a fascist, when they go after Trump for being Hitler, what they're doing is going after you because you support it. You like the policies. You like his approach. You like that the executive branch is actually flexing its muscle and getting stuff done for the first time in so long. There are two paths to go in this country. You're on one path, and that guy over there in California, he thinks that path you're on will destroy our Constitution, destroy what our founders envisioned. You're here enjoying actually the freedom and economic benefits of this president doing his job and doing the job you elected him to do. And he says we're marching toward fascism and the end of our republic. It's a dictator. It couldn't be clearer. It couldn't be clearer. But understand everything that he says about Trump, what he's really doing is reflecting it on you. He hates you for your vote. He hates you for what you expect from our government. And if he gets the opportunity, he'll blow the whole damn thing up. Now, the speech that you just saw didn't happen effortlessly. In fact, let me start here. That speech, supposedly an address to Californians, as you saw at the very end, did you notice how he said, please, if you're out protesting, do it peacefully? That should have been the first thing out of his mouth. In fact, that should have been the only thing out of his mouth. He does a 7-8 minute diatribe on Donald Trump and how he's a fascist and he's a dictator and how our republic is hanging by a thread and he has to come riding in on a white horse to save it, with all these lies and all this deception. And he waits until the very end of the speech to say, oh, by the way, be peaceful. Don't burn shit. Don't throw stuff at cops. I missed a beep there. He waits to the end to say that. And then did you notice how most of the speech wasn't actually directed at Californians, the people he's in charge of? Wonder why. Didn't it seem like a national speech? Didn't it seem like Gavin Newsom was running for something much bigger than governor of California? Well, you'd be right. In fact, take a look at this. Before he went on the air with his speech, he reached out to a buddy of his to make sure people all around the country were watching.
All right, this is a Fox News alert. Governor Newsom just texted me and was asking me whether or not we will be taking some of his press conference at the bottom of the hour. So that'll be about 3 minutes from right now as he's slated to address the nation. I will fact check it in real time.
He texted Sean Hannity and said, oh, Sean, make sure I want to get good ratings. Make sure I'm on Fox News. When the cameras are turned off, behind closed doors, Gavin and his pals think that the people who watch Fox News are mentally deficient. They think they're stupid. They think they're haters. They think they're racist. But, he wants to make sure a lot of people are watching him. After all, he's got a podcast to promote, right? So he texts Sean Hannity and says, hey, Sean, make sure you cover this. Okay, so Sean Hannity, dutifully, Sean probably thinks this will be good ratings. Let's go. Kind of a neat idea to play a speech and then pause once in a while and fact check it in real time and give running commentary as it happens. Wait a second, that's our show. Stay in your lane, Hannity. Anyway, so here we go. Let's watch the speech with Sean Hannity, okay? This is great. Great moment.
I'm talking to my control room, and they're telling me that there's no audio available. I'm trying to put Gavin Newsom up. We can show a shot of it again. I'd like to carry it for people. I'd like to hear him again excoriate Donald Trump and blame Donald Trump. Oh, it just went down completely. I mean, you can't make this up.
You can't. You can't make this up.
You can't make this up. That's right. Governor Hairgel, the man who's got his steady hand on the rudder of the ship of state of California, the man who's really the competent one, couldn't even get the audio working on his big address. You'd think as a professional podcaster like Gavin Newsom is, he'd have a good audio team. but apparently not. Here's what people saw when they tuned in for the speech. Democracy at a crossroads. Actually, I got to tell you, I like this speech better. I mean, he still looks like an evil but I mean, it doesn't piss me off as much as actually watching the speech and hearing it. Yeah. This was the speech. It's amazing. By the way, you wonder why his wife wasn't there standing next to him. Usually, you know, politicians always have their wife standing next to him. His wife's a big film producer, makes documentaries, wins awards, makes a ton of money, all of them politically motivated, of course. She wasn't in Sacramento at the time of the speech. No, she was spotted in Beverly Hills. Just so you know, there's no looting or arson going on in Beverly Hills. But she decided to go shopping while the rest of the city burned about 5 miles east of where she was. And do you notice she has security guards with her? See that big guy? That's not her brother. That's not some family member or friend. No, that's the security for the governor and his family. That's California Highway Patrol, by the way, in the state of California, that handles that kind of security. And as Angelino Rick Grinnell points out, dear God, she came to Los Angeles to shop using her $4,000 purse. Gavin Newsom and his wife don't care about the chaos. It's true. Look at that. That's one of those big, what are they? Are those Birkins? Is that what those are called? I can't remember. Yeah, that's Gavin Newsom's wife while the city is burning. All right, so the speech doesn't work. What else happened yesterday? Before Gavin Newsom delivered the remarks, Trump was in the Oval Office, and as usual, reporters like to throw questions out at him. So there were some questions about Gavin Newsom and the violence in Los Angeles.
When is the last time you spoke with Governor Newsom?
A day ago. Called him up to tell him, got to do a better job. He's doing a bad job, causing a lot of death and a lot of potential death. If we didn't send out the National Guard, and last night we gave him a little additional help, you would have, Los Angeles would be burning right now. Los Angeles would be not a lot different than what you saw take place in California and Los Angeles just a little while ago.
All right, so there's Donald Trump talking about why it's important that they called in some security there to help protect the federal buildings and assets. But the first question, when was the last time you talked to Gavin Newsom? He said a day ago. A day ago. This is now suddenly going to become a big controversy because Gavin Newsom says that's a lot. Gavin Newsom, by the way, you would think he would have more time, more things to do with his day than just scroll his mentions on X, but apparently not. He says there was no call. Not even a voicemail. Americans should be alarmed that a president deploying Marines onto our streets doesn't even know who he's talking to. Okay, so now we've got phone call gate, right? Trump is asked on Tuesday, when did you last talk to Gavin Newsom? The president says a day ago. Newsom says that's not true. Okay, well, can we clear this up? Well, Trump tried to clear it up in real time on Fox News as John Roberts, anchor, in the midday news slot there, was trying to deliver this story about Gavin Newsom, denying that a phone call ever took place. Well, apparently Trump reached out directly to John Roberts from Air Force One as he was flying to Fort Bragg. Here, watch what happens.
Between Gavin Newsom and President Trump. Gavin Newsom, after President Trump said in the noon hour in the Oval Office that he called him yesterday or the other day, Gavin Newsom tweeted the following. He said, quote, "There was no call. Not even a voicemail. Americans should be alarmed that a president deploying Marines on our streets doesn't even know who he's talking to." Well, President Trump contacted me from Air Force One on his way to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where he'll be in just a little while. He said the first call to Gavin Newsom was not picked up. The second call Gavin picked up. We spoke for 16 minutes. I told him to essentially, quote, and this is quoting the president, "get his ass in gear and stop the riots, which were out of control more than anything else. This shows what a liar he is. Said I never called." So here is the evidence. And here is the call log that the president sent me from his phone. This was June the 7th. Now, granted, this was on Saturday. But look, there's 1:22 o'clock in the morning. Which would have been 10 o'clock at night, 10:22 at night, California time. There was an outgoing call for 4 seconds. And then there was an outgoing call for 16 minutes. So that from the president, which says is proof that he spoke to Gavin Newsom early in the morning, our time, late at night, Friday night, would have been June 6th, I guess, in Los Angeles. So, Governor, over to you for the response.
Say that's next, right? We're waiting to see what if Governor Newsom has a response to the president's. Essentially, what he has there is the receipt for what he says is the call that was made.
It's all about
in
the
a long
receipts.
Conversation, yeah, exactly, in a 16-minute
receipts.
conversation. As you mentioned, as things were heating up, is the timing of that call, as things were really just beginning to get started. So it's
That's right. And it was also at a time when the president had made the decision to deploy National Guard to protect federal assets and federal employees. Now, let's just be clear here. Gavin Newsom's claim was, and you can see it right here, there was no call. There was no call. That's unequivocal. There was no call, not even a voicemail. And now the president says, well, there was a call. Here's the date. Here's the timestamp. Here's how long the call took place. Okay, well, as John Roberts just said, over to you, Gavin Newsom. And here's Gavin's response. If only he had shown the right ones. Trump doesn't even know what day it is. I don't know what the right ones means, which is not really English, but that's okay. He lives in California. English is the second language in that state. Trump doesn't know what day it is. So I guess he's hanging his hat on the fact that Trump said it was a day ago, and it turns out it was 2 days ago. That's it? I mean, Governor Newsom, Governor Hairgel, Governor Alien Demonic Lizard Man, you said there was no call. I mean, we see it right here. There was no call. That's what you said right there. There was no call. And now your quibble is, oh, not that call. Wait, but I thought there was no call. As has been said before, you can't make it up. He couldn't get his speech working. He couldn't get the microphone working. He couldn't get the audio out. He texts Sean Hannity begging for him to carry the speech. Then when Trump said, yeah, I just talked to him a day ago, I told him to get his ass in gear and secure the streets. And Gavin Newsom says there was no call. Trump proves there was a call. And then Newsom says, yeah, but it wasn't a day ago. So let me just get this straight. Governor Newsom has reduced himself voluntarily to the guy who says, actually, it wasn't a day ago. He's memed himself. He's that guy. When did you call to Newsom? A day ago. No, there wasn't a call. All right, here it is. See, actually, it wasn't a day ago. It was a couple days ago. You see? Got you. Got you. Vote for me. Oh, California. God. Clean up your act, man. You can do better. You got to do better. We're counting on you.